Hello, and welcome into Teen Disciples Podcast, the podcast where we discuss what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ as a teenager. Hey everybody, we're live in the studio, and we have my friend Brock, so thanks for coming, Brock.
No problem.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Let's see. I just got my mission call. I'm going to Spanish Fork, Utah, and I start training in the home MTC September 16th. I leave September 25th to go to the Provo MTC. So it's like a nice 30-minute drive from my area, so that's kind of nice. But I just graduated high school. I was top 10% of my class. I am a complete massive nerd, so anything that comes to video games or Legos or anything, I am all over it. And if the second you talk to me about sports, I'm gonna be fast asleep. Like I will not remember anything you said about it.
Okay, note to self.
Yeah, the joke in my family is that I always say, go sports ball. Or like whenever my brothers and my dad start talking about sports, I'm always like, oh yeah, go so-and-so with a touchdown or touchback, and they're watching basketball or golf, and that doesn't make any sense at all. So.
Okay, I got it. That's awesome. Okay, well, to kick off, what's one experience that you've had in your life that's either like increased your faith or deepened your discipleship to Jesus Christ?
So I talked about it a little bit at youth conference, but last summer, the summer leading up to my senior year, I was out on a walk with Daisy on a Sunday afternoon, and I got a text from my mom saying that I needed to head home early. So, and it wasn't like you need to head home in 15 minutes. It was like, you need to come home right now. So my first thought was, oh no, did I miss a curfew? Did I do something wrong? Like, this is going to be a massive talk or I'm going to get in trouble. So my mind started going, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And then she sent a text. I think she sent a text saying you're not in trouble. And I was like, oh, then what is it about? Like, I started continuing to panic. I got in the door and I saw a roll of toilet paper on the armrest of a couch. And I was like, this clearly has to do something with chores, because it's like something about how we're not cleaning the bathrooms properly or whatever. There's no other reason a roll of toilet paper would be there.
Okay.
So
that tracks.
I get there and I sit down, but then I see my dad sitting in our single recliner, and he's teary-eyed. He looked like his eyes were red and puffy as if he'd been crying. And my mom was sitting on the couch, stoic and solemn. And my two brothers were sitting there. None of us had any idea. Not 10 seconds go into the conversation when my mom says that they have been struggling a lot recently, and by the end of the year they will be getting a divorce. And as soon as she said that word, my youngest brother immediately started bawling. And it hit us all. I say like a freight train because that sounds stereotypical, but that's exactly how it felt. This wasn't something that could be expected either. It's not like, first of all, it's not something that's talked about in the church. Like, families are supposed to be eternal and forever. So we don't have experiences where we talk about divorce. It's kind of a hushed topic. Like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. That's bad.
Yeah.
But my mom instantly told us that she prayed for weeks about this. And every single time the exact same answer was, this is the correct option.
Yeah.
This is what is in your plan. This is what is meant to happen. It wasn't, she didn't mess up the signal. She wouldn't do this if it wasn't for her benefit and our benefit as well. So this was completely acting in faith. And none of us expected it, because it's not like the stereotypical divorce situation where your parents have blow-up arguments every night and you have to hear from the basement or upstairs that they're yelling about something, and you can mentally prepare for that. There was no signs, there was no warnings, it happened. And I think that's what hit us all the worst, was that no one could have predicted it, no one could have expected it, and so it genuinely rocked our worlds. And it was hard. It was going into my senior year, I was getting ready for a mission, and now my life had kind of turned completely upside down. I began to lose faith in the principle of eternal marriage and what that would look like for my family in the eternities. And it got really hard. About, I want to say January, I was still waiting for my application to BYU. Like, you're told that you have to wait until February when you have to turn your application by November. And so everyone else here in Lubbock was freaking out, saying I have to wait 2 whole weeks for my acceptance or rejection letter to Texas Tech.
And you're like, that's nice.
Yeah, you're lucky. I have to wait for months. So that was a bit, it was stressful, and there were many long nights that went into writing the 7 different essays that you have to do, and like that was really overwhelming. I just started doing my mission call. I didn't realize how much information you had to put. I thought I knew you probably have to put some insurance information, but it asks you to fill out your entire medical history step by step. You can't just give them documents. You have to show it. You have to get physical and a dental evaluation. Like, there's a lot of steps that go into it.
Yeah, it's labor intensive.
Didn't expect. Not to mention that when I had started it, I started the second semester of school, and I took 4 AP classes. So normally with AP classes, you learn that by the second semester, they start really overwhelming you and really start pounding you with work in order to get you prepared for the test that's upcoming in just a few months. But my AP government class, you only have 1 semester with him to cover 6 different courses, or 6 different topics. And so he really laid homework and topics on us every single night. And it got really overwhelming with school and all these other applications and things. Not to mention that at one point I ended up having a yelling match with my dad, and we got into a really heated argument. And our relationship still hasn't quite been the same ever since. And so I started to get really overwhelmed with these things.
Yeah.
And at one point, I did start genuinely crying to God. Like, I need you. I need you to be here. And I felt a little bit of peace from that. But in March, one day, my car seized up. The engine seized up. And that happened because when the car would get low on oil, every 60 days or so it would have a simple reminder that said, hey, your car it's overdue for an oil change. But my brother, it was like 13 days due, and I was like, okay, I need to get this done. My brother reset the alert, so it was going to be another 60 days before it reminded me. So I completely forgot to refill the car with oil, and it seized up in the middle of my driving, which meant that the engine block completely just broke, which meant we would have to spend like $11,000 to get this fixed. And we'd already put like $500 a couple different times into it to fix the engine, and then a couple days later, the engine block light would turn on again saying, hey, the engine's broken again, you need to fix this. So at this point, we contemplated, do we fix this for $11,000, or do we just get a whole new car? And then the very next day after this happened, 15 minutes before school gets out, my youngest brother trips, falls, and breaks his left arm. And he is dominant with his left arm. So that meant that not only were we now paying for 2 separate houses, child support, and my mission, but now we also had to pay for a car and getting a whole new car and a whole new vehicle. And now we had to pay for my brother's arm on top of it. My mom, my youngest brother, and my dad all left to the hospital to go take care of that. I believe they took my younger brother somewhere else. I think he had an activity or something. But the second they left that room, I remember it was just me and my dog left in the house. And that was the moment I broke. Everyone has a breaking moment in life, and everyone has a breaking point, but I don't think we realize what the breaking point is until we achieve that. So I ended up losing it. I lost every inch of my control, everything that I had. I started yelling at the skies, started contemplating where God was. I felt somewhat like Joseph Smith when he was in Liberty Jail. I mean, it's not the same level. He was imprisoned and I was just dealing with this. But I still yelled at God. I felt like he was apathetic, as if he didn't care or didn't know that my family existed. I felt like he had kind of brushed us off and threw us to the side. And I hadn't felt like we had done anything wrong. We always say, why do good people have trials? And it's to bring them closer to Christ. But I wondered what happens when we get close to Christ and we're still being broken and beaten. What do we do then? And so I yelled at God and I got frustrated with him. And, well, frustrated isn't the right word. I was ballistic. And so what ended up happening was that day I got a confirmation from him that said, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to be here. I need you to read your scriptures. And I said, okay, that's fine. I don't know how that's going to help. The very next day in seminary, and sorry I've rambled a lot, but this is where...
No, it's okay.
This is where the faith building comes in. The very next day in seminary is all about Easter. But instead of doing the typical Easter talk where it's the Christ story and his crucifixion and resurrection, she said, we're not going to do that. I have prepared a whole bunch of scriptures of Christ talking to people and Christ's words. And I want you guys to take about a half hour to pray and listen to God as you read through these different passages, and just listen to how Christ speaks to you. Not how he speaks to these people, but how these words speak to you.
Yeah.
And what promptings come to mind. I started reading, and the very first thing that hit me was the scripture that I just sent you, John 14:18. And it says, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. And immediately I got hit with this overwhelming love. And the very first words that came to my head were, I've got you. I know you personally and intimately. And I am not going to leave you, and I'm not going to abandon you. You are mine, and I am going to get you through this. You will thrive. And that was the faith-building experience for me. It was that moment that I felt that God was there, and it was the moment that I felt that he never truly abandoned me. It's still been hard. These days still haven't been easy. I still haven't seen sunshine and rainbows every day. There's been a lot of overcasted nights, and there's been a lot of storm clouds. But it was that moment that I felt God say to me, I am here. I've never left you, and I will never leave you. And that not only strengthened my testimony in him, and not only strengthened my faith that, okay, I can do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do great things because of this. But it also strengthened my testimony in the scriptures. I'd always had faith in the scriptures. I knew that they were the words of God. I knew that they were words of actual prophets. But I never really had a testimony in the faith or the blessings that they brought. And it was that day that I finally gained that testimony of them. And it was that day that I truly felt the Lord's love for me. And so that, contrary to what one might think, the divorce actually helped me to build my faith in that incredible way.
Yeah, that's a lot. And thank you for just being so honest about your experience, because I know there's people who are in similar situations. And I'm just curious, what would you say to yourself looking back to that summer, or what would you say to someone who is in a similar situation right now?
I think first thing is I would tell that story to them, and I would say that I know where you are.
Yeah.
And I know that you are probably broken right now, and I want you to know that the Lord is there for you as well. That it's not fair what's happening, and he understands that. It doesn't mean that it's right that what's happening, but that doesn't mean that he's just going to leave you. And I think I would testify to them that they are loved, and I'd probably beg them to reach out to the Lord and actually ask for that love, or to feel that love, because they just feel alone, and they feel like they can't be understood when Christ is the only one who can actually understand. And I think it would take a lot of understanding and empathy to be with them. And I think if I were to tell them anything, I think it'd be, don't forget Christ, but don't forget that he won't forget you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I'm also curious, from a slightly different vantage point, what would you say to the friends, like the teen friends of people who are in those situations? What would you advise them to do in order to support that person?
I think in order to support that person, I think the first thing would be, don't come to them with advice. Don't say, hey, you should do this. Hey, have you tried this? Because a lot of times they're going to be, obviously I've tried this. Obviously I've done X, Y, Z, I've done fill in the blank, and it's not working. The thing that person needs to ask is, this is what you should be doing. Because that makes them feel like they're not doing enough. Makes them feel like they're failing. And so I think the thing I'd say is, instead of offering advice, offer yourself and say, I am here. And if you don't understand what they're going through, you are completely okay to say that. You can say, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm really sorry for you anyway. And even though I don't understand, I'm going to be right next to you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to cast judgment on what you should do or what you should and shouldn't be doing, because I'm not in this exact same situation, and I don't know how I would handle it. but I am here for you, and I am going to walk this with you. And just know that I am here if you ever need someone to not give advice or solutions, but to first just listen and to be those ears, or to be that shoulder that you can cry on. And then say, if you want advice at any time, I would be happy to give it. But I am here to be your ears first, and I'm not here to be your construction worker to fix it.
Yeah. And I love that Jesus Christ is there for all of it, that Jesus Christ is there for the person who's in the experience, but Jesus Christ is also there for the people who are trying to support those in the experience. And that ultimately it's up to us, no matter what situation we're in, just like you're saying, to reach out to Christ and ask for his help and turn to him with the intent of listening, because when we do that, that is what will provide the solutions, because Jesus Christ is ultimately the one who solves all problems and fixes us and makes us whole. So I just love that so much. So I know you told me you wanted to bring a hymn. So remind me what the hymn is.
So I have never listened to Strive to Be. I apologize for that. But my favorite hymn has always been I Stand All Amazed.
Okay, awesome.
And I think I need to pull up the hymn because there's this specific, I'm pretty sure there's a specific part I like. Let's see. I think it's either the second or the third verse. I think it's the second verse. And it says, I marvel that he would descend from his throne divine to rescue a soul so rebellious and proud as mine, that he should extend his great love unto such as I, sufficient to own, to redeem, and to justify. And I love that because I definitely felt that there's times in my life where I haven't just been proud, but I've also been rebellious. And I've learned that the word proud doesn't mean that we think that we're everything to ourselves, that we are above someone else. Because pride can also be that you think you're below someone else. But what I learned, and this was partly through seminary, is that pride means that you think you don't need anyone else, or thinking that no one else can help you. Whether you think that you're too good to have someone else's help, or thinking that you don't deserve someone else's help. And so I think and so with that in mind, I think it's really powerful what this says, that Christ would descend not just to my level, but below my level, to understand my pain in the most intimate and perfect way possible, to understand that I'm not going to be perfect, and there will be times where I'm not just perfect, but I'm actively rebelling against him. I'm actively doing the opposite of what he wants, and that he's still willing, despite this rebellion, to not just save me, but perfect me. And I think that is a really powerful thing.
Most definitely. And I think we all see times in our lives where we know that we are the rebellious soul. Not only that we are lost, though we are lost, but that sometimes we choose to do things even though we know that we shouldn't do them. But I love that the gospel teaches us that there was a plan for that too. That it's not an if, it's a when. And when it happens, Jesus Christ is there through all of it. And I love with that verse that he should extend his great love unto such as I. How do you feel like throughout this experience that you've talked about and just throughout your life, you've seen your divine identity like as a child of God, as a son of God? And how has that impacted you?
So one thing my mother said to me a couple of years ago was when I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues, was that she said that despite all these things, you are my son and you are my child, and that is your identity. You are not a sheep, you're not a leader, you are not... A lot of people at church gave me the nickname prophet because I knew the Spirit somewhat well. And I felt like that put a lot of pressure on me to continue to uphold this spiritualness. And I felt like I couldn't ever let my guard down at some point, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, but she told me that you are my son and that you are not anything else but that. And that's carried a lot with me to my identity as a son of God. I am one of the things that the Lord said to me was that I am his. And because of that, that means that he will not leave me, he will not abandon me, he won't forsake me, and he's not going to judge me. He is going to love me as I am, but he's also going to love me no matter how I change. But he also doesn't love me to the point where he just accepts my flaws. He wants me to become as best of a person as I can because he loves me and he wants what's best for me. And so that identity has helped me to feel God's love for me. And it's helped me to understand that I'm not just a smart guy at school. I'm not just a guy who gets good grades, or I'm not just a guy who's going to go on a mission, but I am a son of God who knows me, and I am the son of a God who delivers me and who cares for me, and that I am a brother to a man who knows me more perfectly than even my parents and myself, and that man will save me, and he will come down to me, and he will be able to look me in the eyes and he'll say, I am here, and I have always been here. And I think that divine identity that I've been given has helped me to know that I'm okay. I'm still not where I probably should be, but I'm going to get there. And he's going to help me get there along the way.
Yeah, I love another thing from just youth conference, because that was recent and on my mind. If ye love me, give me commandments. And thinking that God loves us so much that he refuses to leave us where we're at, but that he pushes us to become better, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. That's when he's right there. I think a lot about I know you said you're not the sports guy, but the idea of how muscles grow, which is that they have to tear and then they regrow. And I just think that's unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, how we grow, is that God has to tear us. But when that happens, we grow through that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I completely agree. I think that is completely true. I think and I don't think it just applies to muscles, but I think it can also apply to the brain too. When we're trying to learn a new subject, oftentimes there'll be moments where I don't get this. What is this?
Brock and I both took AP chemistry. It's real.
Yes. But it's that moment, right? What are you saying? You're speaking numbers with, you're putting the alphabet inside of math now? You're just, at this point, you might as well be speaking Greek to me. But then it's that moment where our mind finally breaks and we're like, okay, I give up. What do I do? And then someone comes along and explains it in a specific way that builds you right back. And then you go, now it clicks. You kind of have that light bulb over your head and you're like, I get it now. I didn't get it before, but I do now. And because of that, everything else makes much more sense. And it kind of builds you up like that. And I think, kind of going back to what I said, everyone has their breaking point. And I don't doubt that that's just a part of life. We will be broken, we will be hurt. But because of that, once we reach that breaking point, it's only then that our spirit will really grow. And we can grow it through those little ways too. You don't start going to the gym lifting 45 pounds on each arm. You don't start being able to squat 250 on each go. I went to the gym a little bit, so I know a little bit there. But you don't start out having immense strength. You have to go there, and you have to allow yourself to work up a little bit each time. And I think that just as much as we have to be broken completely in order to grow stronger, I think it's also important that we focus just as much as on the little tiny gains just as much. I think that there should be a healthy balance between destruction and tiny little breaks here and there that grow us. One thing that my mom loves is a type of Japanese art style. I can't remember the name of it, but what it is when they smash a plate or a plate breaks or chips off, instead of throwing that plate away or saying, oh, it's chipped, it's garbage now, they take liquid gold and they seal the plate back together with that gold. And so now the plate is back and put together. But now those cracks aren't burdens or aren't ugly. They shine through and they highlight the person's accomplishments and appearance. And it makes the plate more complete as a result. And I feel like and my mom equated that to the gospel. When we are broken and we have our cracks inside, the Lord doesn't try to cover them up or hide them away. He exemplifies them and he creates them into something much more. And he creates us whole because of that. But he doesn't just create us whole, he creates us better because of it. And then another thing, one of my favorite talks is by Joseph B. Worthland, and it is called Sunday Will Come. And my mom showed me this talk a couple years back, but I have grown to love and really lean on this talk. And the first half of this talk is him talking about all his family members and all the people he loves. And he talks about how each of them have passed away. And he talks about how close he had grown with them, how close he had grown with his mother and his father, and how he had learned to love his wife for years and years before she passed away. And he talks about all these dark, heavy days. And then he talks about Christ. And he talks about how Christ was crucified and tortured on Friday. And he says we all have our Fridays. And he says that we have those days where we are shattered and the little bits and pieces of our universe lie broken at our feet. We'll all have those days where we are just broken and we cannot push any further. And then the talk completely switches gears. And it goes from this dark and sad and miserable way of talking about being broken to saying that Sunday will come. We all have our Fridays, but we also have our Sundays. We'll have our days where we're broken, but we have our days where we rise again. And he testified that whether in this life or the next, our Sundays would come. Whether we are fixed tomorrow or we're not fixed until we're on the other side, we will be fixed and we'll be brought back together again. And we'll be brought back stronger. And I loved that testimony that he gave. And because he didn't sound like he had an easy life, you know? Like all the people that he loved and cared about so closely had left him and he felt alone. But at the end of the day, he didn't let that destroy him. He had his faith to say that despite this, I know that I can once again be whole. And I know that I will once again be reunited with my God and my family. And that is such a wonderful blessing and promise that we have. And so I think, honestly, I think when it comes to breaking, I kind of love the concept of being broken because everything in life must be broken before it can grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I love being at that point of just thinking about Jesus Christ being broken. And through that, all of us are made whole. So to wrap up, just what does it mean to you, Brock, to be a disciple of Jesus Christ as a teenager?
I think one of the things is that it means to be a soldier. Like, Nelson gave a talk about joining the youth battalion and how we need to help gather Israel. That was kind of our job. And since then, the youth have been more and more included in church activities and church things. So starting at the age, not when they turn 12, but the year they turn 12, young men can receive the Aaronic priesthood. And that didn't really change for me and my younger brother. We're both birthdays in January. But for my youngest brother, his birthday isn't until July. And so that was a massive change for him. Instead of having to wait until his birthday, halfway through the year, he can immediately receive the priesthood and start serving with it. And then in the temple, they now allowed anyone who was able to go to the temple to act as witnesses for baptisms. And now what I've learned recently is that they've started allowing not just teenagers and youth to start giving talks, but they've allowed children to start giving talks too, and to start going up there onto the pulpit and bearing their testimony. And I think that is so cool. But I think that's part of what being a disciple of Christ is going out and doing these things and being able to keep pushing and moving. I think, kind of back to the soldier thing, you will be forced to go into situations you don't want to go in. You'll be forced to go into battles that you don't want to fight, but you have to fight, and you have to keep going. And at the end of the day, you will either come out victorious or you will die knowing you gave your life for something greater. And not that we're going to literally die, but back to the broken thing. We will become broken as time goes on. But the incredible thing is we're not like other soldiers. Just because we're broken, that doesn't mean that we're going to stay broken. And that means that we can still come back and that we'll be able to continue fighting and pushing on. And the other thing is that as soldiers, not only they still have their individuality, but they lose that to become part of one. Kind of like with the people of Zion, they become one mind and one body, and they all work together for a common goal. And it helps push them to something greater and something better. And I think that being a disciple of Christ as a teenager means that you will have a lot that you'll be battling, a lot that you'll be struggling with. But I think that that will be for your good. And I think that that will be necessary, and I think that it will help you further along on your journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for coming today, Brock.
Thank you.